בבקשה.
Good evening, everyone. We are very happy that you are with us today. We are going to have the second event, the Zoom event of Women in Auschwitz. My name is Yaakov Asher. I'm the CEO of Moreshet and the co-founder of WISC, alongside with my friend, Professor Lily Zamir. Professor Lily Zamir will conduct the evening. Professor Zamir is a professor in David Yalin College in Jerusalem. She is teaching for many years courses of Holocaust, gender, the combination of both of them, and so on. And we are very happy about the fact that WISC is having this event, and the stage is yours, Lily.
Thank you, Yaakov. Good evening, everyone. As Yaakov said, I'm the co-founder and the academic director of WISC, and I'm very happy and excited, I would say, to have you with us today. This is the third panel that we are having in WISC, dealing with women in the Holocaust, and it is the second on the topic of women's voices from Auschwitz. The previous meeting was focusing on individual women. However, this time we are going to deal with women that belong to certain organizations or groups in KZ Lager Auschwitz. We are going to have three excellent speakers. Each speaker is going to have between 15 to 20 minutes. Please, speakers, don't let me be your nanny. Please end on time. And after the third lecture, we are going to have time for questions and a short discussion. I'm very honored to invite our first speaker, a very distinguished scholar of Holocaust, Dr. Teresa Wontor Cichy. Hope that I pronounced it well. I was practicing the whole day and last night as well. Teresa will talk about women in KZ Lager Auschwitz. I can't say all that must be said about Teresa because she's one of the very outstanding scholars of Holocaust. I'll say only a few words. Teresa works for years as a main researcher in the center of Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum in Auschwitz. She's there from 1998. Her researchers focus on fates of various prisoner groups like Jehovah's Witnesses, Bible students, Christian clergymen, Sinti and Roma, political prisoners, and so on and so forth. She's the editor of many books and many excellent research papers that I think that most of nowadays students that are dealing with Auschwitz are citing her and know some of her works by heart. So it's my real privilege and honor to invite you, Teresa, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me for today's meeting. And I have to say that the situation, the context of women in Auschwitz has always been a part of the research in Auschwitz Memorial. The first researchers approaching the general knowledge, the general history of Auschwitz were also always having a special desk, a special group who were working on Auschwitz. So it's the information I'm going to introduce, it's the result of the work of actually few generations of historians in Auschwitz. Let me start with the general information. So first of all, let's see the numbers. The historians managed to establish that between 1940, 1945, June 1940, January 45, at least 1,300,000 people were deported to Auschwitz. In this group's majority are Jewish people, over 1 million, deported from all occupied Europe. Second group in terms of numbers are Poles, 150,000. 23 Sinti and Roma, another group which was transported from different European countries. Soviet prisoners of war, 15,000, and then 25 people from all occupied Europe. How many of them are women? So the number is estimated as roughly 151,000. But this time we consider those who were registered in the camp. So this is the difference between deported. Not all deported people were registered, especially if we approach the situation of the Jewish prisoners or Jewish people. So the number 131,000 are the people who got the number in there. And here again, majority are Jewish prisoners. We have them as 82,000. Oh, sorry, 10 is missing. And they constitute 63% of the whole population of women in the camp. Then the next group, 31,000 Polish women, then 11,000 Sinti and Roma prisoners, and 7,000 prisoners from various countries, mainly from Russia and from Germany. How did it happen that Auschwitz became camp also for women? We know, well, in June we will commemorate the first transport of Polish political prisoners, and for more than a year, almost 2 years, only men were being deported to Auschwitz. Well, it all happened because of the fact that the prisons in occupied Poland and also in the part of the country which was incorporated into Germany were overcrowded with women. Then another thing which is also nowadays taking into serious consideration was the economy of the camp and the needs for slave labor, the needs for hands for work. So this is why Auschwitz became a place where women started to be deported. The first group was brought from Ravensbrück. The 26th of March 1942 is the date that the first 999 prisoners were registered, given the number from 1 to 999. They were considered with different categories. Some of them were political prisoners, arrested because of different events. Some were arrested because of some social situation. Some were arrested because of the consequences of their religion. The same day, together with the prisoners, they brought to the camp supervisors. This is how the camp was to be organized. So the Auxiliaries trained in Birkenau were sent together with the prisoners. The one which is remembered the most was Maria Mandel, Auxiliarin. However, the first was Johanna Lagenfeld. Maria Mandel was taking the position after her. The same day, in the evening, to the camp was brought another transport of women, this time from Slovakia, from Poprad. And these women were Jewish, 999 Jewish women. And in fact, this is the first transport of the Jews to the camp in terms of mass transports, where the whole group are just Jewish prisoners. They were not selected. They were all registered in the camp. Unfortunately, not much survived about this first group of Jewish prisoners. The photograph we may see the prisoner given number 1474, category Yehuda, so Jewish, and the name of the camp, KL Auschwitz. In the following months, more of the prisoners were brought, and still they were all registered in the camp. The prisoners, the women in the first period of the Frauenlager, so female camp in Auschwitz, were kept in Auschwitz I. Here we may see the 10 barracks isolated from the rest of the camp, which were until the beginning of August 1942, the female camp. At the same time, mass transports started to be sent to Auschwitz. Here we may see one of the photographs taken much later, taken in 1944, but it illustrates so greatly what the transport looked like, and also illustrates the proportions of the people, the number of mothers, the number of children. They were to go for selection. They were to be considered by the physicians, German doctors, only judging on their appearance if they are fit for work and not fit for work. And as we know, only small group, 20-25% roughly, was considered as fit for work. The others were sent for the gas chamber. So the women, mainly young, healthy, they became prisoners. And again, from the same album, from the same collection taken in May 1944, we may see this woman after registration, after they were shaved, after they were given the camp dresses, camp uniforms, ashamed, just staying together, holding hands in fear. They are entering the camp. They are entering the new reality. Where the Jewish prisoners were kept, well, as I mentioned, in Auschwitz I, it was only until August 42. Then the women were moved into Frauenlager, which is one part in Birkenau. Then another sector, which was strictly women, was in the middle part of Birkenau, so-called transit camp. Here the Hungarian Jewish women were kept before they were deported to Germany. Then another sector, which was also for women, never completed. So the women were kept there in really difficult conditions, was so-called B3. And then there was one more part in Birkenau where the women were kept. That was some family camp for Jews from Theresienstadt, men, women, children. So again, we have another sector where the women were kept. Polish women were being sent to Auschwitz again from the beginning, so from spring 1942. And they were so different in terms of arrest. Some of them were members of resistance movement. Some of them were arrested because of the consequences of members who were members of some organization. Or some of them were never had contact in any resistance or clandestine or movement. They were just living in the territories which were interested for Germans, like Zamość region, which was to be the new territory for German colonies. And so here we may see the peasants from Zamość region and the mother, Katarzyna Kwoka, and her daughter, Czesława Kwoka. And then in summer 1944, when the uprising started in our capital, in Warsaw, again, huge transports of civilians were brought, and again, many women with children. The women, Polish women, were mainly kept in Frauenlager, so the first part of the camp. Some of them were also sent to the work in the sub-camps, which were located in the nearby villages. Sinti and Roma, they were deported from all occupied Europe, not select, just from the train. They were taken for the camp, they were registered, they were even given special category, the whole family, mothers with children. We may see their faces because just few photographs did survive, but we also may see them from portraits which survived as they were made by a prisoner, by Dina Gottliebova. who had to do these portraits for Josef Mengele, one of the doctors in camp for Sinti and Roma, for his special interest. They luckily survived, and this is how we may see more about the Roma people. They were kept again separately in the sector Zigeuner Lager, so they were having just this camp for this group. Then the prisoners of different nationalities. And again, the circumstances, the reason for the arrest were so different. Many of them were members of political movements. Some of them, especially from Ukraine, Belarus, from Russia, they were sent because that was the revenge of the resistance movement, partisans movement, which was very active on this territory. We may see here some of them. Charlotte Delbo, brought here from France, the members of resistance movement, or Vlastimila Kladivova, the young member of the Czech resistance. How about the daily accounts? So in December 1942, well, I have to admit that we don't have the whole statistics. So this is why we just consider the numbers, the data which we have, which survived. So in December 1942, there were over 8,000 women in Frauenlager in Birkenau. In April the next year, the number grew and it was more than 18,000. In January the next year, again, the number was much higher, over 27,000. Then in August 44, again, it's close to 40,000 women. At the last roll call, 17 January 1945, there were over 18,000 female prisoners here in Auschwitz, in Birkenau, and in some of the subcamps. As we may see, the numbers were changing, growing really, and then closer to the liberation because of the evacuation, it was smaller. Women have to work in the camp, work badly organized. They were not trained, they were not prepared. About some of the work we know from the art of the survivors, like the drawing by Mieczysław Kościelniak, or by the German documentation. Like here we've got a photograph taken at the time of building one part of Birkenau, and easily we may identify here women, their dresses, and they do really heavy work with the ground. However, some of them were sent for different duties. And for example, the SS were having in their houses prisoners who were to cook, who were to clean, who were to do all the housework. And they were either Jehovah's Witnesses or Bible students. Like the commandant of the camp, Rudolf His, he was having in his house, Sofia Stipel brought in the first transport numbered 619. The other prisoners who were gifted in music could be taken for the orchestra. In Birkenau, the conductor of the orchestra was Alma Rosé, a wonderful violin player coming from a famous family of musicians from Austria. The chances to survive were higher in those units, but again, it was not a proof that they will survive. Alma Rosé did not survive the camp. She died in Birkenau in April 1944. Going through the testimonies of the survivors, we may learn a lot about the conditions, and what they all stressed was the catastrophic sanitary situation, lack of water, lack of toilets, and it all caused diseases, epidemics, all diseases caused by dirt. Then diarrhea was something they all were going through, or typhoid fever. Another thing the survivors also are talking a lot is the punishment. Occasion for being punished individually or collectively, everything was occasion. Just like here we may see a document saying that Sarah Schweitz, was punished with 3 days, 3 nights standing only because she picked the apple from the tree. And this is why she was sent for this punishment. It means that she has to work the day long and then stand during the night without proper rest. Or just like on the painting by Janina Tolik, survivor from Auschwitz, did something wrong. Maybe was late, or maybe was quick, maybe forgot about something, and the whole unit was punished. They were to kneel, carry their bricks. There was also medical crime committed in Auschwitz, and so much of it was with the attention to women. 2 German doctors, Karl Klauberg and Horst Schumann, were to find the cheapest and the most effective method of mass sterilization. And block number 10 in Auschwitz I became the place of the crime. The women chosen for the experiments were mainly Jewish women from Belgium, France, Greece, Poland. Despite the catastrophic situation, the women were trying with all their abilities, intellectual, mental, to survive. And their ways to survive were so different. Some of them were coming from religion. So the rosary made by Franciszka Studzińska of the camp bread, and collective meetings, collective praying, collective singing, or poetry, like the poetry which was written by Krystyna Żywulska, Polish prisoner, Jewish prisoner. And her poems were learned by the prisoners. And in the evening, they were sitting together and just saying this very moving poems in a group. I remember many years ago, I interviewed a survivor from Auschwitz, and the lady in her late 80s visited us because she knew the poems so well, and she was encouraged by the family members to travel to Auschwitz for the record, because it's so unique that she can still, after that many years, say the poems. Of course, she didn't know the authors, and the author was Krystyna Żywulska. So it is kind of resistance, kind of support for each other. In mid-January 1945, the camp entered the phase of evacuation, and the women were taken for the path to Wodzisław Śląsk, 63 kilometers, 2 or 3 days, nights in some shades, in some random buildings, in cold, in wind, in frost. Those who reach Wodzisław Śląski, it doesn't mean that they were safe, that they survived. They were taken on a train transport and then transported for another camps in Germany, where again the path for liberation was for many of them long and windy. But what happened to the camp? There were still some people in the camp. And again, it was a place for women, this time women from the town. There was a message spread that there are children in the camp, small, in cold, frost, with no food. And a group of women came to take care of the children. And here we may see Emilia Klimczyk from the town nearby, together with her husband. And she took little boy, aged 4, who could say about him that he's Kola. That was all he remembered. And little Kola was in a very bad medical state. The family took care of him, and it took many, many years. Kola was an adult person when he learned that his family, biological family, was in Russia, but he decided to stay in Poland. Another person who was also taken and saved by a woman was little Eva. Karolina Kirch was the mother who took care of this little girl. Eva was brought from Hungary. Most probably she was a twin, so this is why so little girl was registered in the camp. And
you
Eva,
have 3 minutes left.
Thank you. And Eva was with the family, knowing that she is Jewish, For many years, she was looking for her biological family, being part of many programs, many trips, but unfortunately, she never found her family. She died 2 years ago, and she was visiting us very often, telling her story. And little girl from Łódź, Lucia Kałuszyner, later on Perla Spinka, she was taken by Kazimiera Krzak, a young lady from nearby area, only for a few months until little Perla was found by her mother and then left for Israel. So the place for women, for help, for resistance, for courage, for shaping community, for helping one another to survive, was a very long and windy path for the camp history. Thank you very much for your attention. The information were just some signals, and I hope that some of them would be interesting for you, and more, as there is so much field, so much occasion for the other researchers to approach this history. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Teresa. It was outstanding, introduction to our next two speakers, as if you spoke and agreed among yourselves who is going to do what. Our next speaker is Professor Gideon Greif. Gideon Greif is an Israeli historian and educator, as he likes to tell about himself. He's a chief historian of Shem Olam Institute for Holocaust Research, and he's also a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Jewish Studies, or Judaism, he says, on Ono Academic College. Gideon has many, many publications, books, articles, and also TV work. He's a multidisciplinary researcher. Professor Gideon Greif is going to talk today about Nazi female supervisors and functionaries in Auschwitz. Please, Gideon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Thank you so much. How much time do I have?
You have 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay. Thank you so much. Dear friends, in recent years, we have been paying more and more attention to the place of Jewish women in the Holocaust. We praise the resourcefulness, bravery, and courage of Jewish women who contributed to the survival of the Jewish people, both as mothers, as wives, and as members of the fighting underground in many places in occupied Europe. The heroism of the Jewish woman in the Holocaust is a magnificent chapter which has not yet received full attention. May I allow myself to tell you, my dear friends, that at the end of last week, there was a premiere in Tel Aviv as part of the Doc Aviv Festival of a new documentary film which deals with the heroism of one Jewish woman in Auschwitz. More precisely, the film is about the famous Polish Jewish dancer Francesca Mann, who with a few gunshots ended the life of the brutal SS man in Auschwitz-Birkenau, Josef Schillinger. The incident took place in the dressing room of the crematoria building in Birkenau in October 1943. Schillinger demanded that Francesca undress her clothes, but during the provocation that broke out in the hall of undressing, the flexible dancer managed to take control of Schillinger's gun and fired several fatal shots at him. Although the story sounds like a Hollywood legend, it is backed up and proven to me by authentic series of testimonies from Sonderkommando prisoners, survivors, and other Auschwitz survivors. This is a story of supreme heroism. And I can only recommend to you to watch Lena Chaplin and Daniela Wright's movie called Francesca, a powerful and moving film. But this is not our topic today. To a lesser extent, we are talking about the monstrous women from the other side of the coin, about the women who served Nazi Germany and their beloved Führer, Adolf Hitler, women who tortured other women, Jewish and non-Jewish women, in the concentration and extermination camps, who whipped them with a whip, shot into the mouth of small Jewish children after seducing them in sweets, humiliated and hanged women on the gallows. Who were these women? Where did they come from? What brought them to be so cruel? What caused them to lose their human image? Equally interesting is the following question. How could they move from that cruel world of the camps of Auschwitz-Birkenau to a peaceful civilian life immediately after the war, from today to today? It happened within 1 minute. Many questions remain open regarding these women, which I have been dealing with in recent years. This occupation, of course, does not give pleasure to the historian, but it is inevitable. In the short lecture, I will try to explain what was the role of the guards, or the so-called guards, in the concentration and extermination camps, and I will also present some of them in a closer and more detailed manner. During Nazi Germany and during World War II, approximately 13 million women were actively involved in the Nazi Party. Approximately 500,000 women knowingly participated in the Nazi mass murder industry, and approximately 3,700 women served in a variety of roles in the extermination and concentration camps in the Generalgouvernement. Only a few of them stood trial. In 1942, the first Nazi headquarters arrived in Auschwitz, Majdanek, and Ravensbrück extermination camps and began serving in administrative positions. I have to emphasize that not a single woman was a part of the SS. In Auschwitz and other concentration and extermination camps, they were called the Supervisors. In singular, Aufseherin, in plural, Aufseherinnen. They were not SS members. They were attached to the SS, but their title was Supervisor, Aufseherin. In 1943, due to lack of guards, the Nazi authorities began recruiting women for guards as part of the SS. So there was a change in 1943. According to various estimates, the German Nazi women took part in the extermination of about 1.5 million Jews and non-Jews in the several camps they have served. How were they recruited? Female guards were generally from the lower to middle classes, and they had no relevant work experience. Their occupational background varied. One source mentions former prison matrons, hairdressers, or retired teachers. Volunteers were recruited via advertisements in German newspapers, asking for women to show their love for the Reich and join the SS Schutzstaffel, SS support for service organization for women. Also, the League of German Girls, BDM, assisted in recruiting the new volunteers. So mostly they saw an advertisement in the paper, enlisted, and came to the places of where they were taught how to become an Aufseherin in the camp. I would like to show you now the presentation I've prepared for this lecture. Can you see it?
No.
Now you can.
Yes. Let's see.
Okay,
Yes.
let's have a look at the Aufseherinnen a few days after they have been arrested. I think just looking at them gives you an impression about their cruelty, about lack of compassion. Most of them looked very similar, as if they were twins, as if they were sisters, but they were different persons. However, they acted in a same pattern of cruelty, brutality, aggression, and sadism. Let us see some of these women. For instance, Johanna Langfeld. She was a Nazi guard and supervisor at 3 concentration camps in Lichtenburg, in Ravensbrück, and finally in Auschwitz. At the end of the war, she was arrested and imprisoned for the role in the Holocaust, but she escaped prison and she never was tried. I would like to read one passage describing her cruelty. I held my 4-year-old child by the hand. The defendant took my child away from me and threw my child onto a still empty car, so the child got wounded in the face and began to cry and to call me. But I was put aside to the group that wasn't loaded onto the cars. When I tried to reach the child, crying on the car, Langfeld was about to beat me so cruelly that I fell. She continued to kick me, although I was lying already on the ground, and she knocked out almost of my teeth with her shoe. And another passage which describes her cruelty. During these selections, in which Langfeld was involved, she tortured the prisoners in a cruel way, beating the women and kicking them blindly. She would tear the children from the arms of their mothers, and when the mothers tried to come near the children and defend them, the defendant would beat the mothers horribly and kick them. I saw right next to me a young 20-year-old mother who tried to go near her 2-year-old child, but Langfeld kicked her, beat her so cruelly that she didn't get up anymore. Just 2 examples of her cruelty. On December 1945, let us see more pictures of her. She liked dogs, like the others. On December 1945, Langfeld was arrested by the US Army, and in September 1946, she was extradited to the Polish judiciary, preparing a trial in Krakow, Poland, against SS personnel in Auschwitz. On 23rd of December 1946, she escaped from prison. Given a prior relatively positioned treatment of inmates in this German Nazi concentration camp located on occupied Polish soil, the escape was assisted by Polish staff of the prison where she was held. After the escape, she went into hiding in a private home, and around 1957, she returned illegally to live with her sister in Munich. Langfeld died in Augsburg, Germany on 26th of 1974, aged 73. So she was not really punished. A book was written about the case of Johanna Langfeld. We see here the cover. Here she is in her recent years. Maria Mandel was the next one. She was an Austrian senior warden in the women's camp of the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination camp and in Ravensbrück concentration camps. She is considered for the killing of thousands of female concentration camp prisoners. She was really punished and was hanged in Krakow in 1948 as a war criminal. Here she is in her young years. On October 7th, 1944, she was assigned to Auschwitz-Birkenau, succeeding Johanna Langefeld as SS Lagerführerin of the women camp under SS Rudolf Höss. As a woman, she could never outrank a male, but her control over both female prisoners and her fellow subordinates was absolute. Here she is in her uniform called the Beast of Auschwitz. Mandel was the one who created the Women's Orchestra of Auschwitz to accompany roll calls, executions, selections, and transports. The book in which she is mentioned by Susan Eicheld is The Truth About Fania Fenelon and the Women's Orchestra of Auschwitz-Birkenau. Maria Mandel was tried in the Auschwitz trial in Krakow in 1947. Here she is during her trial. And the execution took place on 1947. Next one is Irmgard Ilsa Ida Grese, what a long name, a German concentration camp guard in the Ravensbrück, Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Bergen-Belsen concentration camps. She was seemingly limitless, showed limitless cruelty. She acted unrestrainedly against women and men with a whip with rubber truncheon. She said to have repeatedly tortured women and men. She demanded operations to be carried out without anesthesia and with unsterilized knives, and was delighted in the death screams of victims. Her brutally earned her the name Jena of Auschwitz and the beautiful beast of Belsen, or the blonde beast of Belsen. Here she is with Maria Mandel together, and during an execution, Grese the beautiful beast, here she is, and the look with Kramer waiting for her trial in August 1945. She attracted many researchers. This is one of the books dedicated to her, Irma Grese and the Holocaust, The Secrets of the Blonde Beast of Auschwitz Exposed. Now to Johanna Bormann. She was a German guard in various concentration camps and was part of the SS entourage. In May 1943, at the latest, she was transferred to the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, where she was initially assigned as a guard, and Margot Drexler and Maria Mandel were among her superiors. In other assignments, Bormann was deployed in the farms of the Auschwitz concentration camps, the Babist farm yard, for instance, the Budi farm, and Raisko, and supervised film prisoner detachments during agriculture activities. She was beating prisoners and set her dog on them. She was feared by the prisoners because of her cruelty. She was usually called Wiesel, or the woman with the dog. Here she is with her colleagues waiting for her trial on May 2nd, 1945. If you do not recognize her, she is the third from left. Here she is at the Bergen-Belsen trial, the first to the right. She was hanged because of her severe crimes. This is Johanna Bormann. Another outstanding sadistic Aufseherin was Alice Orlovsky, who was a concentration camp guard Aufseherin at several camps in Poland from 1939 to 45. In early January 1945, Orlovsky was among the SS women posted on the death march to Auschwitz-Birkenau from Polish camps, and it was during this time that her behavior, previously observed as being brutal and sadistic, became even more inhumane. On the death march in mid-January 1945 from Auschwitz to Loslau, Orlovsky gave comfort to her inmates and even slept alongside them on the ground outside, but this was really outstanding. Here she is during her trial, the first from left. She looks very different from one picture to the other here at the Krakow trial in 1947. She was considered bestial guard and was punished together with this horrible Aufseherin, Hildegard Leschert, who was a Aufseherin in Ravensbrück, in Majdanek, and in Auschwitz concentration camp. Famous she became from 1971 to 1976 during the Majdanek trials in Düsseldorf, Germany. She was sitting and knitting for her grandparents, listening, not listening to the heavy accusations against her. She was sentenced to 12 years of prison, and when she came out, she lived few years until she died at home. Here she is, Hildegard Leschert. Another woman, another Aufseherin was Herta Ehlert.
Please conclude. You have 3 minutes left.
Sorry?
Please conclude because you have 3 minutes left.
Before the war, Ehlert was a saleswoman in a bakery. She was sent first to Ravensbrück concentration camp on November 15, 1939, and then she was transferred to Majdanek. It was 1943, and then from November 44, she was an Aufseherin in Auschwitz-Birkenau. She left Auschwitz on January 18, 1941, and was taken from Auschwitz to Bergen-Belsen, where she was evacuated on February 1945. Here she is. Let me talk about one more Aufseherin, Elisabeth Volkenrath, who was executed after the war as a war criminal at the Bergen-Belsen trial. All these women were extremely sadistic. Let me show you also Elisabeth Lubka and Emma Anna Maria Zimmer and Teresa Brandl. It's a whole group of brutal, cruel, merciless women who tortured the women, who humiliated women, who enjoyed torturing women using their whip, using their dog. And when standing before trial, they looked at the judge and absolutely denied all crimes. They said they are good-hearted women who did nothing wrong, and even asked why they were brought to the trial. It's absolutely unnecessary, unguilty. They pleaded, but the judge and its colleagues thought differently. So women were part of the German Nazi machinery of death, torturing, humiliating of innocent women and men. Not all of them were severely punished. Most of them returned to their former careers, and most of them died as very old women. Brandl was 93 as she died. Others were 96, 97, 98. There is no justice, so to say, but some were sentenced to death. Thanks God, at the beginning, especially in Poland, the verdicts were rather severe as accordingly to the crime. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Greif. We were moving from Teresa's lecturer who gave us a general view from Auschwitz, and then we went to a certain specific group, and we are going to conclude with Gil Faran. Gil Faran is a doctoral student, so he's our hope for future, the younger generation who is still focusing on researching the Holocaust. Gil is also a guide for youth and adults delegation in Poland, and he's also the chairman of the Association of Guides of Israeli Delegations to Poland. Gil is going to talk about something hopefully more optimistic, about women escape from Auschwitz. Gil, the floor is yours. Gideon, please close your materials, yeah, so that Gil can take over.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present you this topic about women who escape from Auschwitz. Two things for beginning. During the presentation, you will see some documents from Auschwitz, and it's a great privilege for me to say great thank you to Mr. Prof, the head of the archive, for his great help. Also, you will see a painting made by prisoners from the camp, which related to escape. Most of them deal with escape of male from the camp, not women. So let's go. And the first story I would like to share with you is the story of Janina Nowak. Janina Nowak, young Polish woman who brought to Auschwitz at the age of 25. She got a prisoner number. She was hosted in Auschwitz I. And 12 days after she arrived to the camp, she managed to escape from the camp. She walked out of the near the Sula River, and she managed to escape. She was in freedom for 9 months, and then, unfortunately, she was caught in a Łódź area, moved to Krakow, and from there, she was returned to Auschwitz and got a new prisoner number in the camp. Only this morning, I received, you can see the photo of for the first arrest and the second arrest, and only this morning I received confirmation from our police expert that this is the same women. Later on, she was moved to Ravensbrück, and there she was liberated and died at the age of 82 or even 90, it depends upon the source. But the influence of their escape, and she was the first woman who escaped from the camp, was the establishment of the panel company for female by the order that came from Berlin. And the second aspect is, after her escape, the camp authority decided to cut the air for all women in the camp. Until then, for the first 3 months of women existing in the camp, they cut only the Jewish female air, and from now on, they cut all the female air. The second is Dofia Biada, which brought to the camp at the age of 40 at the beginning of 1943. And after about a month, again, from walking outside of the camp fences, she managed to escape. She prepared herself. She wore civilian clothes below a prisoner uniform and managed to escape. Later, she arrived to her family in a small village near Krakow, where she remained and stayed until the end of the war and survived. And escape was part of one of the first books published about Birkenau, Smoke over Birkenau. And on the right side, you can see a testimony or statement to the Museum of Auschwitz. The result of her escape was the decision of the camp authority to tattoo the all-female prisoner, not only Jews. After the first escape of Janina Nowak, they cut the hair for all the prisoners, and from this escape, they tattoo all the women prisoners. Until then, the tattoo was only for Jewish prisoner. When we talk about general characteristic of escape, we can see that according to the records we have, only 49 women escape or try to escape from the camp. Most of them escape in group of 2, 3, and even one escape of 9 Russian prisoners at the last day of 1942. We know the name of these 9 Russian prisoners, but we don't know anything about their fate. Here you can see the origin of the women that arrived and managed to escape. The largest group, because of the 9, is the Russian, then the Polish prisoner, and prisoner from Germany. I don't know if you noticed, but from the Western countries, France, Belgium, Netherlands, we're talking about 5,000 prisoners, none of them tried to escape from the camp. The oldest one to escape was Aloisa Katz. She was 43 years old. The youngest was Veronika Vlesevich. She was only 19 while she escaped from the camp. The one who say the shortest time in the camp is Teresa Gevat, 7 days, and Mala Zimterbaum, I will talk about her later, was in the camp 646 days before she managed to escape. When we see the graph regarding the number of escape over the years between male and female, I would like to mention one fact. Until the beginning of tattoo, all the prisoner, 30 female escaped from the camp. After the tattoo began, only 19 managed to escape. Another phenomena that we can see that among the men, the male prisoner, the number of escapes is going up over the year. In the women, it's increased over the year. Basically, it's cutting by half every year, year by year. And we can see that 1 of every 2,175 female try to escape, which is in the rate of men is 1 every 295, which is 8 times more in the men comparing to the women. And only 2 things that I want to mention now because of the time. Women are not part of the resistance movement in the camp, and a lot of escape were made by help of the resistance movement, especially for male. And women without hair, it's not unique look in Europe, and it's deterred them of escaping. About the fate of these 49 women, 4 were kept and later were killed or died in Auschwitz, 2 murdered during the escape trial, 8 were captured, and the further fate is not unknown. 2 German prisoners who escaped, captured, brought back to Auschwitz, and later moved to transferred to another camp. Half of the escape, we don't know what happened to them. Probably they are all died. One Polish woman managed to escape. She was hidden in Warsaw and died, unfortunately, as a free woman, but died during the Polish uprising in 1944. And only out of 49, only 7 survived. 4 Polish, 2 German, and you may be surprised that 1 even Polish Jew survived, and we'll show her later. Another aspect of escape, which is not part of the statistic, and I know that Dr. Jacek Alejandro is making now research about escape during the evacuation. Dozens of women prisoners managed to escape during the evacuation of the camp on January 1945, while dozens of local women helped the prisoner, female and male, trying to escape. And I want to share with you one story. The story of Tzvia Zuckerman and Chesia Teichmann. In January 1945, they're both 20 years old. they managed to escape from the evacuation tour on the small village of Poreba. They hide in a bar for 8 days, eating snow. And then the owner of the barn, who's telling Gertruda, discovered them. She helped them, she owes them. Even there was German around their house, she owed them, helped them for 6 weeks until the area was liberated. And this photo was taken immediately after the liberation of the area. And a year later, both sent Gertruda thank you, their photo and thank you word. And in 1985, Gertruda received the Righteous Among Nations, and there are more and more stories like this. When you talk about the escape of Jewish prisoner, and if I will ask you, open the microphone and ask you, give me name of a famous prisoner who escaped from Auschwitz, probably 5 names will appear. Witold Pilecki, the Polish one, Werber and Wetzler, the Jews from Slovakia, who escaped in April 44, and Mala Zimterbaum and Adek Galinsky. Adek was in the first transport to the camp. He got the prisoner number 531, and Mala, which origin is from Poland, she was caught in Belgium, brought to the camp in September 1942, and become a famous prisoner in the camp. And we can see a portrait which made in the camp by another prisoner. And we can see that because of her position, her hair didn't cut so often or so well. They both managed to escape in 24 of June 1944. You can see how much time they spent, let's call it spent, being in the camp. And their escape was painted by Vladimir Novakovsky on the camp, but he made one mistake. Yes, Mala was carrying a toilet bowl over her head, but Adek was wearing with SS uniform, not a prisoner uniform, but probably the painter didn't know about this fact. But this is the only painting that related to women, but if you look at it without any knowledge, you didn't know that one of the prisoners there is a woman. After 14 days in freedom, they were captured, returned to Auschwitz. They were tortured, trying to find out who helped them. They didn't tell anything to the authorities. And after a few months, they were killed in the camp, Adek in the men sector, and Mala in the, they tried to anger her, and then later killed her in the crematorium. About a month later, they escaped on the end of June. A month later, and 2 weeks after the capture and the return of Mala and Adek, almost the same story happened. In this time, our hero is Jerzy Bilecki and Cila Stawińska in the camp Cybulska later. Jerzy is again from the first transport. He had the number 243. Cila arrived to the camp, brought to the camp in January 43. They worked together in the grain warehouse where they fall in love. And then Jerzy initiate their decision to escape. They escape on the 21 of July 1944, again, less than a month after the other couple escaped. And you can see that Bilecki had almost 1,500 days in the camp, and even Cila was quite long in the camp. They march about 10 days until they arrive to Jerzy family's small farmhouse in the area. After a few weeks, Jerzy was joined to the Home Army and fight against the Nazi, and Cila was stay in his family house for about about 5 months. When the area was released by the Russian in the beginning of January, the family of Yeji that didn't like the connection between the Jewish woman and the Polish man told Zila that Yeji died. She stayed in the farm about 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks of the free area, she moved on. She went back home. Then she moved to Sweden. She got married with another Holocaust survivor and immigrated to the United States. Is this the end of the story? Not yet, because in 1983, Zila told her Polish housekeeper in New York about her story about her escape from the camp. The housekeeper immediately told her, listen, I just saw on the Polish TV a Polish man who described the same story.
יומיים מאוחר יותר, מצלצל הטלפון בביתו של יורק. השיחה מגיעה מניו יורק.
Halo, słucham. Kto mówi? Ja słucham. Milczenie. No i po chwili ja pytam, Lutek, to ty? Bo tam miałem kolegę. Myślałem, że z Nowego Jorku dzwoni ten Lutek kramarz. I mówię, Lutek, no nie wygłupiaj się. Dosłownie tak powiedziałem. A ona, słyszę głos. Juracku, dokładnie, Juracku. To nie Lutek, to twoja Cylutka. Rany boskie, poznałem głos Cyli, bo głos się nie zmienia na ogół. Zamurowało mnie, omal nie przysiadłem koło tego telefonu. I mówię, to ty żyjesz? No żyję.
ב-1983, יז'י וצילה דיברו בפעם הראשונה אחרי 39 שנים. כמה שבועות אחר כך,
גיל, תעבור לאנגלית.
Sorry. In 1983, they make connection between themselves again. After a few weeks, Zila arrived to Krakow, and this photo was taken in one of their meetings in Krakow. When Zila landed in Krakow, Yeji waited for her with 39 roses, one for each year they didn't see each other. Unfortunately, there is no photo from that meeting, but thanks to the new technology, we can assume that this meeting looks something like the one made by the AI technology. 2 years later, Yeji received Rights Among Nations. Later, he published the story, the book about their story, and later it was even published by another one in Germany. And again, the question is the end of the story. The end of the story ended when our hero died. But in the beginning of 90s, Zila decided to disconnect the connection with Yeji. Yeji tried to reach her, but she didn't reply until in 1998, when Yeji went to the United States to deal with selling his book or even make a film about that, about their story. Yeji convinced her to meet, and that's how their meeting in 1998 looks like. Their story is amazing, and every one of at least 49 women prisoners who tried to escape from Auschwitz is amazing, as Yehuda Bauer said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gil. It was an excellent presentation, and you respected time. So thank you for two things now. We have still about 15-20 minutes for questions. So if you have questions to our lecturers, this is the moment to ask them. If there is no question, I would like to ask, first of all, Teresa. Would you say that the very fact that the women arrived to Auschwitz in already from certain countries, communities, and they shared the same wagons and they reached the ramp as a group, did this fact help them in organizing their lives? Because you showed some tokens that they were making, or it is the female initiative that is in our genes to create our little groups. Even if we don't have our family, we create something as a substitute.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And well, talking to survivors and also reading the publication, we may see that definitely unity was the first element. The first stage was the fact when they were arrested and they were going through interrogation in prison. This I mean about the many prisoners considered as political prisoners. Some of them, they knew each other because they were members of the same organization. So this is why this built the links a lot. And later on, when they were in the camp, again, they very often, as long as they could, they were staying within this group. The Jewish survivors are again saying about the links which were coming from the family and from the community. And the other thing they say, they stress, is also the language. I remember a survivor interviewing in one of the building in Birkenau, and I asked her, can you tell me please what it looked like, let's say in the evening after you came back from work? So she said, so we were sitting here, the 5 of us Polish from Silesia. The French communists were over there. There were also French Jews in the barrack, but they were like 2 different groups. There were Slovak Jews, and they were very close. They were very supporting each other a lot. And I was asking, and how about the communication between each group? So she was saying that depend on the language, basically. If they learned the Lagersprache, it was to be something. If they did not learn, because very often they were moved from place to place, so there was not enough time to learn quickly. So this is why the links were very hard to establish. So this is what we may see, but that was important. That was so important. We see it in the literature, and Krystyna Żywulska, a survivor from a Polish Jew, she actually lost some of the friends, close friends. She was deported to Auschwitz. She was deported with a false paper as an Aryan, non-Jewish. So again, she was in a very difficult situation. And then she found another group, and this group helped her a lot, helped her to find a job in Effect and Kamer. So actually helped her a lot to survive really the camp. But I do have some comments about the lectures we heard. Thank you very much, Professor Greif, and thank you very much, Gil Faran, for excellent presentation. And as for the Aufseherinnen, not long ago there was a film which is a Polish production, which was dedicated to this mysterious story how Johanna Langefeld was actually smuggled out of the prison in Krakow, and then she was hidden in the town, in the city for a long time. And it was the time the film was prepared, there was still some of the survivors of Auschwitz who were telling about Lagerfeld and why, because this is how the survivors decided to take her out of the camp, why they decided so. So it's extremely difficult from many aspects, but the result is moral aspect first of all. The result is that yeah, she died. I don't think she was very happy after she was out of the prison, because she has to hide a lot for a long time. But this is what happened. Then another few sentences about the escapees. I got just this privilege to meet Jerzy Bielecki. When I came to work, he was always coming. For the 14th of June, the anniversary of the first transport arrival, he was a teacher himself, and he was speaking very often to different groups, and during his meetings, he was sharing some of the details. For example, he was saying about his dear friend Edek Galiński and Mala Zimmerbaum. What happened? How they ran so far away. They were in Slovakia actually, and according to some information which reached the survivors, it was just this innocent situation in the shop. Mala went shopping. They were in hiding, and she wanted to buy a bread, but she didn't have money. She had some jewelry, and she wanted to pay with this jewelry. And that was reported to the Gestapo, and this is how they were caught. After such a struggle, such an effort to be outside. So yes, just this, and Edek Galiński was also so dearly, it was always dearly remembered by the friends from the first transport. So
I see that there is a question for Gil. Have you seen it? It was on the chat.
Yes. The first escapes, because the women were, the question is, did they escape from Auschwitz I or from Birkenau? The first escape, most of the escape were in 1942, while let's say half of the time of 1942 they were still in Auschwitz, but most of the escapes were when they walk out of the camp. It wasn't so easy at all, even to men, especially for men and for women who escaped from inside the camp. Most of the escapes were later made when they get out of the Auschwitz I or Birkenau to outside commando toward there.
One of the questions were if you know about any of those women who managed to join the partisans.
As far as I know, the answer is no. More than that, it was really, it's almost impossible to find a statement or things that the women that escaped wrote or gave testimony. I didn't succeed to find almost every. You saw the statement, short statement made by one of the prisoners who escaped, but I don't know why. I don't know why they disappeared. The women disappeared after they managed to escape and survive the war, of course.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Yes, can I ask, please, Yoel? Do you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to ask Teresa a question. Since you're working at the research department, so I wonder what would be the main topics of research regarding women in Auschwitz, that should be still pursued, or are we more or less satisfied with what we know?
Thank you for the question. Well, the person who dedicated many years of her work to, let's say, put the frame of the women in Auschwitz was Irena Strzelecka. She started to work in Auschwitz Memorial in the 60s. She retired in 2010, I think. And then a few years after, she sadly passed away. But what she published is just like a base, like a ground we have to continue and actually kind of direct some researchers. Still, there are not enough literature about, as we are approaching transports. For example, still the first group of women brought from Ravensbrück, we don't know them well. In the testimonies, we've got a lot of information about that they were, many of them, people, women with very low morals. It's because mainly Rudolf Höss, who during the in his memoirs written during the trial, described these women as the worst. He was saying they sent to me from Ravensbrück the worst element which was there. But then if we start to look closer what we have, it turned out that the women were so diverse. So it really needs a better approach. Another group, which is again very important for a good research, and I know that there are some publications, are the women brought from Poprad. Unfortunately, sometimes this group is being called as the first transport to Auschwitz. Yes, the first Jewish transport to Auschwitz, but not the very first women to Auschwitz. So this has to be said clearly. And again, what happened to them, because their stories were again so diverse. Again, some years ago, I got this honor to interview Berta Berkowitz, who was deported in this group. And I remember how she was describing the beginning of the camp, in the camp. She was saying that when they were brought for the camp and the Germans came, they were after shower, after disinfection, so ashamed, so humiliated. And the Germans started to say, what's this? Is it the cloister? Are the nuns brought here? They were just mocking these young girls, because many of them were very young. Berta Berkowicz, she was a teenager, and many of them from Orthodox religious families. So this is why they felt this place so difficult to get into it. And at the same time, we hear about Katja Zinger, who was having a really high position in the camp. So again, it needs attention, and it needs to be approached with the care and a really good picture of the camp. Then it seems like there is a lot about experimentation written, but some of the areas are being known more and more. For example, block number 10, thanks to Professor Hans-Joachim Lang, the German researcher, we have a very good monography. He extended this work, including Greek group, especially focus on the Greek victims. But 2 years ago, I got an email from Holland, from a family. The 2 people were sent to Auschwitz, and one was a victim of the experimentation. never telling the family about her past in the camp. So together, piece by piece, we were uncovering what was her path, what was her way in the camp, what was so precious, interesting, and important for us historians, and extremely important and emotional for the family. And this is only because the books are being published, so the people feel like encouraged to approach the family stories, some which they don't know, which were not told fully, and together we have more and more information. So still the female story is untold. As Gil was saying, it's not enough testimonies of women because simply they were not asked. The process of gathering testimonies was really slow, and they were not really in the spectrum of being interviewed. So this is why they disappeared, unfortunately disappeared. Maybe in many cases there is a chance to rediscover some of the situation and tell the story that many years after. I believe so, and know that it is happening a lot.
We have another question. It will be the last one by Alba Toscano from Spain, please.
Thank you. I read the book by Wendy Lauer, Hitler's Furies. Many of the, this would be a question directed to Gideon. Many of the photos that she had are in that book as well. I downloaded it, read it. I had nightmares all night. The next morning, I threw away the copy because I couldn't stand having it in the house. But one of the things that Wendy Lauer says is that we have our own problems of prejudice against women. In what respect? We always think of women as soft and beautiful and motherly and incapable of any kind of violence or aberrations. We always think that we assume that men are more primitive, more violent, more aggressive. And this colors very often, according to her, and I quite agree, colors our perception of women in roles as that require strength of character, either positive strength, like women who fought in the resistance, and negative strength, like the women who were the Hitler's Furies. So when we say that a lot of people don't study the women, the first problem is that we don't believe that women are capable of this. And so why would you want to study something that can't possibly exist? So I think that's more of a comment than anything else, but I'd like to hear what Gideon says about that.
Yeah, that's a very important aspect. I was thinking mentioning it in my introduction, but I forgot. That's right. We have a very specific perception on women, but when we take, for instance, Hildegard Leschert, I think she was one of the most cruel people living on this planet. When you read the descriptions of what she did in Majdanek, you can't sleep 1 week, not one night, as you didn't. And the other woman, Braunsteiner, who horrible women. So yes, they contradict our perception on women, and it shows that a man and a woman can be cruel in the same manner, and women can even be more cruel than men. It depends on the personality, and I would say it depends on their parents, the way they were brought up, because I believe that every person takes with him or bears the education he gets at home until he's 5 or 6 years old, not longer than this. And I am very curious to know who were the parents in Hildegard Leschert, for instance, who made her be such a beast, or the parents of Irma Grese or Ilse Koch. There must be something in their education, in their childhood, which can explain to us, which also shows that we historians are very limited in our ability to analyze the Holocaust, and especially the perpetrators. You need your psychiatrists, you need psychologists, because I, as a historian, cannot analyze the character of Hildegard Leschert or others, or Langefeld. We need more multidisciplinary research to explain, to understand, and we want to understand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for reminding me on this important aspect.
Can I contest what Gideon just said?
You can.
If there's time, because it's true.
No, there is no time, but I'll give you another 3 minutes.
Because I would like to mention that the women who played the roles, the supervisor or capos, blocker test, and so on, many of them had a tough, brutal background, but many women who were known as very cruel in Auschwitz actually came from normal families, Orthodox families. We mentioned the Slovakian transports. Some of them who were positioned as capos and blocker tests. If we take, for example, Cecilia Klein, which was called Zilka, and she was the blocker tester of the death block number 25.
A minute, but you talk about the Jewish supervisors. I'm talking about non-Jewish.
Well, non-Jews as well. They were brutalized by camp conditions, and some of them, not all of them, of course, but some of them became very cruel. So it's not necessarily the upbringing of these young women, but also the conditions in the camp. Of course, it's very interesting, and I think this is one of the topics that should be researched, why some women, given the same conditions, became brutalized and others managed to maintain their humanity. In any case, if we don't like the notion that women were brutal, I don't think still that we should throw the books that describe this brutality out of the window.
Thank you. I would like to conclude with citing Eva Nahir from Kibbutz Shara Makim. Once in one of the interviews that I made with her, she told me, you know, in times of extreme, good people become better and bad people become worse. And I think that this is our case. I would like to thank very much our 3 excellent speakers, and of course the participants who bared with us and shared with us this very challenging topic. Our next meeting will be on the 29th of August, and we are going to share a new topic, women who saved Jews. I hope to see you all then in good health and good spirits. Good night and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting.
Thank you.